Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Falling Down. So, a few weeks ago, or maybe almost a month ago at this point, I did a video on St. Elmo's Fire, and it got a lot of attention. At this point, it roughly has a little over 10,000 views, which was huge for my channel. And I mentioned in that video that Joel Schumacher, I wasn't that familiar with his work. Like, I've seen a lot of the main movies that most people have seen of his, such as his Batman films, The Lost Boys, stuff like that. And I mentioned in that video that Falling Down, a film that is often regarded as being one of his best, I had never seen before. But it was a film that I was very interested in seeing, given its reputation. And it's a movie that is very polarizing amongst people. I'd say overall it's mostly positively received. But I've seen a lot of reviews questioning this movie and being very critical of the film and its messaging. And so I watched the movie for the first time. I went into it not knowing a whole lot other than the film is about kind of an everyday white collar guy who just kind of gets fed up with society and ends up going on kind of a semi-vigilante rampage. But as the movie went on, I started to also question what this movie is trying to say on a satirical level, or like what its overall message was. It left me a little bit confused. And so before I get into details, I'm going to read my Letterboxd review, and then we'll take it from there. I find the polarizing reception that Falling Down has garnered over the years since its initial release more interesting than the movie itself. On a technical level, Falling Down is a well-made movie that boasts strong direction from Joel Schumacher and a standout performance from Michael Douglas. As I was watching the movie, I found myself engaged and genuinely curious to see where the film was going to go. But when the film ended, I was left wondering to myself, what exactly was I supposed to get out of this movie? Because the moral to the story is, if you're a mentally unstable husband, you shouldn't go on a rampage and blame society for your own personal problems? Maybe? There was a distinct turning point in this movie for me when the film started to lose its intriguing satirical messaging about the frustrating societal issues everyday people face in America. And it was when I learned the backstory of Michael Douglas's character. Had the movie left his background more ambiguous and made his character more relatable, then I think the film's messaging would have been much more impactful. But because we find out about his past where he was an abusive husband and father who had a history of violent behavior, there is no chance of me sympathizing with him, and his vigilante crusade against society is essentially just one big temper tantrum because of his own personal bullshit. And that makes the film's satire fall apart too. So what am I left with? A well-made movie with some memorable scenes about a crazy asshole who has a bad day in LA. At least the film wasn't boring, and I got a few laughs out of it. Yeah, I initially thought this movie was just about kind of a normal, everyday guy, and that's how the film starts. It starts with Michael Douglas in a hot car with no AC, and, we see all these little social cues in this scene through bumper stickers about religion, and we see the American flag. And clearly, right off the bat, the film wants to have a satirical tone about American society, specifically American society in the big city and how it affects everyday people. And so from there, I was hooked. It was a really interesting opening scene. I was like, all right, let's see where this is going to go. And the movie kind of unravels itself like a mystery. That's what kept it intriguing. But like I mentioned in my review, as we find out about Michael Douglas's past, and we find out that his wife has a restraining order against him, that he has a history of violence and being aggressive and mentally unstable, we find out that he's living with his mother and his own mother is afraid of him. It's like that really takes away the messaging of this movie, which is what I thought it was going to be, was about how life in American society, or the American dream, the false promise of the American dream, can drive somebody insane, right? But that doesn't really work when Michael Douglas was already insane to begin with. Because as the movie starts and he's, going against the Korean store owner, and, he's dealing with the Mexican gang members, and, you just think that it's him fighting back against the state of America in the 1990s. But really, it's just him taking out his own personal frustration on society and it's real. It just comes across as one big temper tantrum. I mean, that's what it is. And so I'm like, okay, so what is this movie really trying to say? Why even bother having all these overt messages about American life in the city if you're just going to have Michael Douglas already be crazy to begin with, and that's not what drove him to his breaking point? We don't really know what drove him to his breaking point. All we know is that he's always, to a degree, been an unstable person. And so the whole time I'm watching the movie, and after I realized what his background was, I was like, okay, so the moral of the story is maybe if you're an unstable asshole, don't take out your frustrations on the world because it's not going to get you anywhere except maybe killed. Like, no shit. So, like, what is this movie really trying to say? And that was the weird thing about Falling Down. I mean, it's like, this is a movie that I really don't see myself returning to because it wasn't entertaining on like an enjoyable popcorn movie level. And I don't think I'm going to get anything insightful on repeated viewings. I will say that Michael Douglas is terrific in the movie. He gives a great performance. The entire cast is really great. I love Robert Duvall. His character was very interesting. It's like he was directly contrasting Michael Douglas, where he was more calm and collected, but he has his own problems with his overbearing wife and people giving him shit for leaving the police force and all this stuff. And so that was an interesting dynamic, and it's a good looking movie. Joel Schumacher, and I said this about St. Elmo's Fire. Joel Schumacher is a talented filmmaker, and his films visually always look very pleasing. Even the Batman movies, which I'm not a fan of, and I think they're kind of terrible, there is a visual style that is kind of unique that I find interesting. And Falling Down is no different. This is a very good looking movie. I like the way the camera moves. I like the sweaty atmosphere. Obviously the heat of the summer day is kind of represented as like a boiling point, similar to that of Do the Right Thing with Spike Lee, which is like the heat is the boiling point for people just kind of losing their shit. So there are elements of the movie that I like. I don't want to make it sound like that I hate this movie. Like, to the people who really criticize Falling Down, said, oh, the movie like supports radical behavior and this guy's a full-blown racist. I'm like, well, it doesn't support his character. It's very judgmental of his character. And I mean, spoiler alert, the movie ends with him getting shot to death because he has no other place to go because of his own actions. So the movie doesn't really support the character. It's very critical of him. So I disagree with that critique. But on the other side, to the people that say that this movie is incredibly relevant and really eye-opening about the societal ills in America, I kind of disagree with that too, because this movie's mainly just about Michael Douglas having a temper tantrum because his wife, very justifiably, doesn't want to be around him because he's a crazy, psychotic prick, essentially. And he is a threat to both her and her child. And I think the movie would have been much more effective had Michael Douglas been a little bit more sympathetic, a little bit more relatable, and you don't even really give him that much of a background, or if you do, it's very subtle. Make it more ambiguous. Make him more of an everyday guy, because the fact that he's already an insane, abusive individual, that takes away all of that stuff. And I think you really need that in order for the satirical themes of this movie to really work. As I was watching the movie, I was kind of reminded of Office Space. Office Space is very satirical as well, and that movie's about just kind of the soul-crushing environment of the American workforce and how it forces people to really hate their lives and like make them live in a box all day. And so, but the difference between this and Falling Down is that you relate to the character in Office Space. You feel sympathetic towards him, and even when he starts kind of going off the rails and he gets into this plot of ripping money off the company, you're almost like rooting for him in a way to get away with it because you understand how soul-crushing the workforce is in America. And that's what Falling Down needed. It needed a sympathetical angle to Michael Douglas's character, because the moment you find out, or the moment that I found out about his disturbing background, I was like, I don't care about this guy. Frankly, I hope he goes to jail or gets shot. Luckily, the movie delivers in that front. But yeah, It's not a terrible movie. Like I mentioned, technically it's very well made. All the performances are really good. Michael Douglas in particular is great. He's one of those actors where he's kind of just great in everything. Michael Douglas is a very consistent actor. He's very talented, and there's a lot of movies of his that I really enjoy. This isn't one of them. I'm very mixed on this movie. I wanted to like it more. I wanted to get more out of it. In the end, I'm kind of just like, I don't see what a lot of the people who absolutely love this movie see, because it's not very enjoyable. It's a pretty dark and kind of twisted movie, but it would have been more enjoyable had it really landed its satirical commentary much better and had a character that was more left to our interpretation and wasn't outright spelled out for us. Yeah, so I'm curious to see what people's reactions are going to be to this video. That's my thoughts on Falling Down. If you think I'm completely wrong about this movie, if I missed something, which it's entirely possible that I might have, please list it in the comments below. All I say is just don't be a dick about it. It's okay that we disagree. I actually want to get a conversation going about the people who really like this movie. What do you see about it? What is it about it that you connect with? To the people who hate this movie, why? And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this film. I'm very curious to see the response in this video. And as always, thank you guys for watching.